Vanakkam. Hello friends. Today, archaeolinguistics has emerged as a very important field of specialization that studies the lives of people who lived in the distant past. It is a modern linguistic tool that combines archaeology with linguistics in helping to recreate aspects of past cultures. In his book, The Horse, the Wheel and Language, the noted anthropologist David W. Anthony points out the limitations of archaeology in that there is only so much that pottery can convey. It leaves behind no clues regarding the opinions, beliefs, and value systems of people who lived in the past. Now, let us take an example of the Kiriadi excavations that have thrown open to us an ancient living civilization of over 2500 years old. We learned that the people lived in houses made of bricks that had very good drainage systems. They had water management. There is dyeing vats that attest to the existence of a well-developed textile industry. But what do we know about their thought processes, their beliefs, faith, value systems, ethics? Very little. Now, is there any other medium in which the ancients left behind clues for us to understand these aspects of their lives? Linguists believe that they did, and that is in the daily speech. And here I would like to quote David Anthony: "Our language contains a great many fossils that are remnants of ancient speakers. Human language is defined by rules of sound. Sound changes are rule governed probably because human beings unconsciously or instinctively search for order in language. Palatalization is the study of how sound changes over a period of time, and linguists study how in daily speech and in its subtle changes we preserve for posterity many a detail about our present way of life. These changes are so subtle that we do not notice them on a daily level." But here, David Anthony gives an example. Let us say a person from around 2000 AD living in England wishes to converse with a person living in England from 1000 AD. Chances are, though English would be the common mother tongue of both these persons, they would absolutely not understand each other. And for this, he gives a very simple example drawn from the standard Christian prayer: "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." Now, this is how we have learned this prayer. Now, rewind back to around 500 years, Middle English, known as Chaucer's English in 1400 AD, calls this prayer as the Lourdes Prayer, and this is how it reads: "Our Father that art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." Now rewind back another 500 years and go to 1000 AD, Anglo-Saxon English, and this is how the prayer would read, and I wouldn't even know how to read this. While today linguists apply palatalization to observe how language changes over time, especially the sound changes, they have also been applying the technique in reverse and have actually constructed more than 1500 words belonging to the Indo-European language family. It's almost like reconstructing a dead language. And David Anthony points out how these languages very much behave like biological organisms. While there is a mother language, daughter languages are born over time, and by the time the daughter languages establish themselves, the mother language goes out of vogue and almost disappears. This happens gradually over a long period of time, and lexicostatistics is a linguistic tool that studies this rate of change. Linguists create a core vocabulary of, say, maybe 100 words and study how these words change over a period of time. For this, the language itself must be ancient with recorded history, like for example ancient Chinese to modern Mandarin. Now, by observing changes in different languages, They have calculated an average rate of change of 14% per 1000 years. So, what happens in 3000 years? The mother language becomes almost extinct. There are exemptions to this, like for example, Icelandic, where the rate of change over 1000 years is just 4%, but that is the exemption because Iceland itself is a very isolated territory because of its very harsh climatic conditions. A very unique and interesting study was published in March 2018 by Vishnupriya Gokilam et al., known as a Bayesian phylogenetic study of the Dravidian language family. The results of this study are very relevant to us in the search for the antiquity of Tamil roots. Phylogenetics is a biological term where the evolutionary history of a group of organisms is studied over a period of time by comparing similarities and differences, wherein Bayes' theorem is a statistical tool that is used to analyze data that is subject to continuous change over a period of time, with more and more new information being available. By combining these two, they have done a phylogenetic study of the Dravidian language, and in the introduction to the study, this is what they state. The dispersal of human languages and their speakers around the world are often viewed through the lens of large language families. However, the modestly sized Dravidian language family has a very important role to play in resolving questions about the dispersal of human populations throughout Eurasia, as well as ancient contact between language families, including Indo-European and Austroasiatic. Now, the researchers have established that the Dravidian language family tree has about 80 languages, and a majority of them are spoken in southern India, followed by a few in central India and a handful in the northernmost part of the subcontinent, like how we saw in the last episode. One or two lie outside India also, as in Brahuvi, which is spoken in the Balochistan province in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And here they have created a kind of a tree, a map of which is being shown. The Dravidian languages are being spoken by over 220 million people today, and the oldest of the language which has a written record is Tamil, which is dated to, according to this study, 254 BCE. Well, today latest archaeological studies are predating it. About this we will see later. And this is the methodology adopted for the study. 20 of these 80 languages were chosen, and the researchers identified the speakers of these 20 languages and made them undergo a sample list, which is known as the Swadesh list. Named after the linguist Maurice Swadesh, this is basically a compilation of 100 words that are most commonly used, such as I, me, you, this, that, eyes, ears, head. Well, actually there are several such lists that today linguists use as tools to collect data, and for the first time, the subjects were made to orally record the words, and these audio records were transcribed, and then cognate coding was done with the help of the very famous Dravidian etymological dictionary of Burrow and Emino, about which we have been continuously seeing in our previous episodes. Cognate coding refers to correlating by means of observing the similarity in sound. Thus, they established that one of the youngest daughters in this language is Malayalam, which is very akin to Tamil in sound. This study cites the research of Badri Raju Krishnamurthy, the Indian Dravidianist and linguist, and who got his PhD in Advanced Dravidian Languages in the year 1957 from the University of Pennsylvania, where he directly studied under Murray, Barnes and Emino. And his monumental work, The Dravidian Languages, is a landmark work that is referred to in all linguistic studies. And here he suggests that the Dravidians were natives of the Indian subcontinent who were scattered throughout the country by the time the Aryans entered India at around 1500 BCE, based on linguistic evidence. Now, these are the conclusions given by the study itself. Taking the year 2000 as the base year, a time median of 6000 to 6500 years has been attested to the birth of a mother language. In other words, there was a root language that had evolved by 4500 BCE. Then the dispersal or dividing of the daughter languages from the mother languages started from around 4500 years ago, that is around 2500 BCE. Given the reduced modern day distribution of languages from that presumed in pre-Old Indo-Aryan times, the study states that the geographical area or the homeland of the Dravidian languages nor its direction or rate of dispersal over a given timeline can be fixed with any certainty. There is clear evidence of Dravidian loanwords into Old Indo-Aryan starting at around 1750 BCE to Middle Rigvedic period, which is 1200 BCE, in a source area identified as Sindh. The study names the root language simply as Proto-Dravidian and hesitates to call it Tamil, while we know that many linguists, including the noted linguist David Wayne McAlpin, who clearly mentioned that Tamil is to the Dravidian family of languages what Sanskrit is to the Indo-European group of languages. And with most of them agreeing today that Tamil is the oldest spoken language in the world, we here have to underline the word spoken because the language itself has clearly defied linguistic tools such as lexicostatistics. If it were that old and had that ancient a root, the language should have died out by now. But here we are, not only speaking the language, but we are able to read and comprehend literature that was composed over 2200 years ago, not only because we read Tamil, but because we are able to relate the social context of the literary works. And if there is any inability or difficulty in reading and understanding these old texts, it is not the fault of the language, but the fault of the reader, in this case, we the Tamil people, who having been given the privilege of having such an ancient mother tongue, either out of sheer ignorance or out of lack of interest or concern, do not have a very strong knowledge of its very rich vocabulary. We have been seeing in the previous episodes of how Sangam literature captures the social conventions of the life of the Tamil people from around 2200 years ago. Now, social conventions should have been in practice over a very long period of time, and then they must have first been captured in oral tradition, which is known as bardic tradition. And it is from the oral poetry or bardic poetry that the tradition is picked up at some point of time much later, and conventional poets record it in written form, in this case in the humble palm leaf manuscripts, the Olai Chuvadi. So how does Tamil, as a very old language, being a mother language, manage to survive for over 6000 years? The roots of the language must be really very deep, and for that to happen, again from a biological point of view, a tree has to stay fixed in a geographical area for a very long period of time to develop very deep roots. Jane Hill, the noted anthropologist, observes people who lived in productive natural ecologies, which provides them everything they needn't migrate nor mingle with others. So they develop their own language and also manage to keep it pure for a long period of time. So despite not having been isolated like the Icelandic, having been influenced by incoming languages like the Aryan language, Tamil has survived beautifully, not only because its roots were very, very deep, but also because the roots were very widespread. Here we are referring to the overly rich vocabulary of our language. And if we were to take just one example, the Italian Jesuit priest and great Tamil scholar of the late 17th century, Veerama Munivar, compiled what is known as a Saduraharadi, in which he lists 197 words to describe the sea or the ocean. Given that this was compiled in the late 17th century, God alone knows how many words we would have already lost by then. Ari, Ampuvi, Alaivai, Karvalayam, Valayam, Viannir, Munnir, Naram, Pari, Bauvam, Varidi, Vodam, Punari, Nemi, Timi, the list goes on. When a word is coined in a language to describe an object for the very first time, it happens almost unconsciously, points out P.T. Srinivasa Iyengar in his work, The Pre-Aryan Tamil Culture. There is no logical reasoning behind why an object is named so. In Tamil, this is called Iduguri Pair. Thus, water is called Neer in Tamil. It is an Iduguri pair. These form the earliest strata of a language. And then in due course, compound words are formed with prefix and suffix to denote objects, and these are known as Karana pair in Tamil. Thus, Neer, water, is an Iduguri pair, whereas where it is used to denote the sea, as in Viannir or Munnir, it becomes Karana pair. Viannir coming from Viyappu plus Neer, Viyappu being surprised. Maybe our ancient Tamil ancestor, upon looking at the sea, or was in awe of the huge expanse of the waters and hence said Viannir. Munnir meaning three and water, maybe because he observed how the oceans were made of rainwater, river water and spring water, Ootanir. Here in Tolgapiyam, Munnir Vazhakkam Mahadu Odi Illai. When the ancient Tamil man went upon the oceans, women did not accompany him, is a custom of life recorded in the Tolgapiyam, the earliest extant Tamil grammatical work. And why then so many words to describe the ocean? And here P.T. Srinivasa Iyengar gives a very simple yet beautiful explanation. He says, as a child revels in the use of toys and is never tired of playing with them, primitive man used the power of inventing words as his great joy, inventing a number of names for the same thing. Love of certain objects familiar to him may perhaps have been another motive. So we know that the ancient Tamils, the Neithal people who lived in the littoral regions, their livelihood and trade depended on the waters whom they worshipped as a mother goddess, and hence so many words could have been born. This youthful exuberance of Tamil continues to lend itself to forming new words. In Tamil we call this Kalichollakam, in a very scientifically structured way, where the formation of the words, because of the strong roots, there is ease of formation as well as speed of formation. Here, if we were to take just one example, because of its computing powers, we have a computer. So, in Tamil it becomes Kanini, Kanithalal Kanini. Kanithal is computing. Now, when it comes to the mouse, in English, it's given the name because it probably looks like a mouse. But here in Tamil, it has a more scientific derivation, Suttuvadal Sutti, where Sutti means to point at something. Similarly, what we use in our hands, the mobile becomes the Kaipesi, you have email becoming Minnanjal, the password becoming Kadavuchol. It is an endless list. Now, this ever energetic, youthful quality of the language is what inspired Manonmaniyam P. Sundaram Pillai to compose 44 verses in praise of the goddess Tamil, rendered at the beginning of his famous drama Manonmaniyam, which he wrote between 1877 and 79, of impeccable literary quality and an diction charged with emotion and ecstasy that prompted our state government to declare it as our state anthem, that end with the words, "Un seeriழமை திறம் வியந்து செயல் மறந்து வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே." O Mother Tamil, we are in awe of your vibrant youthfulness. We salute and praise thee. We will continue more with the linguistic research in the next episode. Vanakkam.